Christmas. How do you and your family celebrate the holiday? Will you leave out cookies and milk tonight? Do you let the children open just one present on Christmas Eve? Will you read the story from Luke in your home? Have you hung enough lights to make Clark Griswold jealous? We probably have as many varied traditions as there are families in this room. But for all of that, we know that Christmas isn't about lights or bright packages or eating too many cookies, which I already have today. We know that Christmas is about Jesus Christ, born long ago, the long-awaited Messiah. The prophets of ages past had another name for this Messiah, Emmanuel. This holiday is about that word, that one word. Emmanuel means God with us. Christmas is about God being with us. That's why we celebrate and remember, because God wasn't content to sit enthroned above our human troubles. No, in a remarkable amount of grace, God wandered down into the midst of us and is with us. God being with us is what makes all the difference to the world and to us as human beings. So as we rehearse the old familiar nativity narrative, consider how God is present with the creatures that we read about. How is God with Mary and Joseph in the cattle stall? How is God with the angels in the wide skies over the Judean wilderness? Or with the shepherds listening to the sheep harmonizing with the angels? Or with the wise men journeying from afar? And with you? How is God with you on this night? How is God with you tomorrow and the day after that? How do you know the truth of Emmanuel, that God is with you?
People who walked in darkness have seen a great light.
Those who live in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shined.
The yoke of their burden and the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor, you have broken, as on the day of Midian.
For a child has been born for us, a son given to us.
Authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named
Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace.
His authority shall grow continually, and there shall be endless peace for the throne of David and his kingdom.
He will establish and uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time onwards and forevermore.
The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this.
Oh, In those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged, and who was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child, and she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in bands of cloth, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn.
I love that the Nativity story, this story of God being with us, starts in such an earthly way. Mary and Joseph have to go back to their family's hometown because some bureaucratic bean counter wants to take a census. Fitting that even the first Christmas was full of a bunch of stress and frustration at having to travel back home, since that's been true of every Christmas ever since then. They have to make the journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem, which isn't an easy one, and all while Mary is expecting. When they do finally get to the family's old stomping grounds, the little town is so full that they can't find any rooms anywhere, and so it's off to the stable. I've stayed in a few places like that. And then, as so often happens, the ordinary gives way to something greater. The young couple has a baby. Of all times now, of all places here, in the middle of all the chaos and in a manner no one in their right mind would have planned, here's a child. And as all the parents in the room will testify, that changes everything. For Mary and Joseph, this is exactly the story of what God in their lives feels like. They are going about life stressed and complicated, never easy, that's for sure. And then something wonderful happens. God is among them, bringing joy and love, making a miracle of the mundane. Wouldn't you know, God was in the mess all along.
region, there were shepherds living in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. Then an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified.
But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great joy for all the people. To you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign for you. You will find a child wrapped in bands of cloth and lying in a manger."
And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying,
"Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace among those whom he favors."
Please be seated. Like the young couple in the stable, these shepherds are going about their everyday business in the fields around Judea when God's angels show up. The angels come on the scene unprompted and without introduction. It's as if they are young children who have been given a great secret, and they're almost vibrating with the excitement to share it. The angels' experience of God is of wonderful news that just must be told. The Messiah has finally come into the world, and it's not some prince born in a palace who will rule some kingdom. No, the Lord is born this day. God is here with you. The angels have to sing because sometimes words just aren't enough to say it all.
those who are serving communion tonight come forward. You know who you are. It would be inappropriate to celebrate something as tangible and earth-shaking as God being with us without also remembering the gifts that God gave us to remind us that God is with us. On his final night, he took the bread that was on the table there with his disciples at dinner, and he broke it, saying, "This is my body, which is broken for you. As often as you eat of it, do so in remembrance of me." And likewise, he took the cups that night, and he poured it, blessing it, saying, "This is my blood, the blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for you. As often as you drink of it, do so in remembrance of me." Tonight we're going to observe communion a little differently than we normally do traditionally in our church. We will come forward and you will be served at one of two stations. So someone will hand you a piece of bread and you'll take it and dip it gently into the cup. No need to go for the world record on that. Just one little dab will do you. And then you may eat of it and return to your seat. If I could, a little bit of experience in this one. If you would make an effort to come forward through these aisles, and then once you receive it at the end of these aisles, go back on the outside aisles to your seats. Everything will work much better. Just trust me on this one. Your pastor knows a little something about this one, all right? You are welcome to come as the Spirit leads you. Let us, if you would, get set up first.
shepherds said to one another, "Let us go now to Bethlehem and see this thing that has taken place, which the Lord has made known to us." So they went with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the child lying in the manger. When they saw this, they made known what had been told them about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds told them. But Mary treasured all these words and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen, as it had been told them.
Shepherds, by any normal metric, do not belong in a story like this. When they receive the news from the angels, the shepherds are out in the fields where we are told that they live. They aren't part of what's happening in the larger society. They don't debate theology or take part in political discourse. They follow around a bunch of rather pungent animals, socializing only with other shepherds and the wild beasts. They don't belong. They're out in the wilds, working in the background when God's angels show up to make them part of it all. The good news of a Messiah, of Emmanuel, of God being with us, is delivered first to them, to the shepherds, to the literal outsiders. It's almost as if God is daring them to be a part of this story. The sign will be that you can find him wrapped up in cloths and lying in a manger. If you wanted to check, just a thought. And they hear the cue, and then they leave the background and enter the scene loudly and without shame. They tell everyone what they have seen, and they hold nothing back. For these shepherds, God being with them meant that for the first time in their long, hard lives, they were part of something special. Instead of being the last to know, they were the first eyewitnesses. For those on the outside, Christmas means that God makes you a part of the story. Christmas doesn't belong to the scholars and their sacred studies. Christmas doesn't belong to the clergy and the ecclesial authorities. Christmas is about Emmanuel, God with us, all of us, and right where we are.
In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who is born King of the Jews? For we had observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. "And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for his wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go, search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road.
They go home another way. They came to see the Christ child, and when they found him, they gave their gifts, turned around, and left. But they go home another way. They came with understanding and with wisdom. They saw the universe stretched out above them and knew the cosmos so well that they spotted a new star's appearance among the multitude. They journey across the nations, converse with kings, and eventually they find a child like they expected, but it wasn't exactly what they thought they would find. They expected to find a king, but what they found in the room was Emmanuel, God with them. The encounter leaves them changed. They are different, and they go home another way. We have come here tonight like the wise of long ago, and we see much and have come expecting to find something. Familiar carols, maybe, sung over candlelight. Families reunited and old friends warmly welcomed. Beloved scriptures read, holy sacraments observed. Most, if not all of us, came here knowing the story and the traditions. We knew what we expected to find. But what I hope is that in the midst of all of this, we will have a profound experience of Emmanuel, of God being among us. Our hope here in this church is that God's presence manifests among us as we worship, not because of anything that we do to earn it or deserve it, but because of God's humility and grace. I pray that somewhere in the ordinary traditions of Christmas in your homes and in your travels, that you will find God among you. As you gather around the tables or under lit trees or huddled around fireplaces or spending a quiet moment in your chair alone, that you will have a sense of God making the ordinary into something special simply by being with you. So this Christmas, my dearest wish for you, my friend, is that you will go home another way because God is with you. So as you take your candle in your hand, as I'm going to take mine, may the flame that we pass and share and grow together in this house be a glowing reminder of God's presence with us in Jesus Christ, who came down at Christmas. As the flame is given to you, and as you give it in turn to another, so too may the grace and peace of our Lord pass among us. And I would ask that those who are helping me pass the flame and begin it would come forward. If you would, pass the flame to your neighbor, and do mind the warning there. Once you have a flame in your hand, don't tilt your candle. Pastor's warning on that one. Tough experience learned. Let's stand as we share in song and light together. May the light of Christ go before you to guide your way in the darkness. May the love of Christ go behind you to leave the world better than you found it. May the peace of Christ go beneath you to keep your feet upon the path. May the grace of Christ go above you to free you from all fear. May God be with you always. Amen.